time has come. It is time to make that infamous why I quit teaching video. So this is going to be a long one. You're going to need to grab some tea, maybe grab a notebook and enjoy. Maybe you want to take a ride. You know, this is a good time filler because it's about to be a long one. So let's get into it. All right, so where do I start? Okay, so it took me a while to make this video, y'all. Just keep in mind, this is happening, this is recording on July 26th. I forgot the date. I'm not looking at calendars as of late because I have an extended summer, but it is the week that I would have been going back to work. So I thought it would be quite timely to make it at a time where I would actually be going to work, back to work. So where do I start, you guys? Okay, so let's make it clear. I'm not giving a disclaimer. A lot of teachers love to make these I quit teaching videos and spend the next 30 minutes talking about how they love their kids and it wasn't about the kids. And then it's clear it wasn't about the kids with me. Like, if you know me, you know it wasn't about the kids. Like, I was hardcore, like, relationship builder. Like, my kids were my kids. They still are my kids. You know, I still find myself doing stuff for my kids, even though I'm not their teacher, haven't been for years for some. But of course it wasn't about the kids. It's about everything else, like all teachers have been saying. So let's get into it. I had to make a list, y'all, because I'm just like, I didn't want to get lost in the sauce. So let's just make this clear. Let me make this clear. And I hope I can edit this so I can like have it blast on the screen. But there is a myth of meaningful work. What do I mean by that? The myth of meaningful work. Keep in mind, I'm a teacher, was a teacher. My husband was a firefighter. So we both were public servants, meaningful work advocates, right? But there is a myth in that, and that is how a lot of people get stuck in doing meaningful work, even though it isn't serving them. It's serving everyone else but them, and they're left empty with nothing. So that's something to marinate on. So that's the aspect I'm coming from. So the first thing with teaching, keep in mind, I started teaching in California. My world was teaching because I started with Teach for America. There's a lot of criticism with Teach for America. As for me, I can't speak for it because I can say my experience changed my life because I went into teaching not as wanting to be a teacher, but I wanted to be a social justice advocate. My whole emphasis was social justice work, and teaching was the means to get there. Now, does it mean that I didn't like teaching? No, but I always was in a teaching capacity. Like, I love kids. I've been watching kids since I was 8 years old, like my nieces and nephews. Then I went into daycare. So for me, teaching and working with kids was something that came naturally, and I honestly looked down on it for a long time. I'm not afraid to admit that because I felt like that's something I've been doing my whole life. Why would I invest in a career to do that, you know? So I fought teaching forever. It wasn't until discovering Teach for America and linking it with my heart for social justice work that I was like, oh, okay, I can use being in the classroom to do the work because that's what I really wanted to do. And the best place to do the work is with the kids, with the youth, because if we don't work with them, things will continue to happen as they are. So I started in 2016 with Teach for America Bay Area. Richmond, California. If you don't know Richmond, California, it is the city where Coach Carter happened. Richmond is known to be very poor, very dangerous. I had the best experience ever. I love my kids. Some kind of way I'm going to get back to Richmond. I don't know how, I don't know in what capacity, but it had that much of an impression on me that I gotta go back. I gotta go back to do something. I just don't know what, and I don't know how, but I'm going back there one day. So when I got there, I didn't know anyone. I had no family and friends in California. The only friends I had was the friends that I met through the organization. So teaching was essentially my life. Teaching was the reason I was in that state. Teaching was everything. Like, I was the teacher that took my kids on ice cream dates. I would do home visits because in California it's very norm. It's the norm to do home visits, to go to your kids' homes and talk to their parents. That's like a normal thing in comparison to the South where I'm at now. So it was easy to indulge in it. I loved it. It was everything, right? And then I got engaged. And I moved back to the South, which is Georgia, which is where I'm from, which is Atlanta, more specifically the East Side. But coming back here was a shocker for me because all the stuff that we talked about in TFA as far as the disparities, the achievement gap, I will say, I guess I didn't realize it, or I didn't see it as much in Richmond because everyone was the same, because my school was like 98% minority. I never had a white student ever till I got back to Georgia. So, and that, keep in mind, it wasn't just black students, it literally, I had like 15 different ethnicities in my classroom. Like, it was the most amazing thing ever. It was something I'll never get in Georgia because it's not that diverse here. It's a lot of black, white, little Asian, and a little Hispanic, but the diversity can't be compared in comparison to the West Coast. So, guys, we're 7 minutes in. So I say all this to say, keep in mind, my love for teaching happened in California. My love started to dwindle in Georgia. I went down to, should I even say this thing? Let's just say a tropical island on the coast of Georgia. And it was complete opposite. I was the only black homeroom teacher. It was very the same. I'll say that. And it drove me nuts. I really had a mental dilemma, breakdown, whatever you want to call it, because I started to see the achievement gap. I saw how the black students were performing differently, it just really put a bad taste in my mouth. That was the worst year of teaching I ever had. I literally was like, what? So then I took a year off because I got pregnant. As I told you, I moved back to Georgia because I got married. The next year I got pregnant. And I needed a year off to recollect myself because that was a shock to go from such diversity and inclusion and West Coastness to like, where am I at? Where am I at? So I needed to find middle ground. So that middle ground led me to the city that I was born in. That city is a city of two different tales. It's a very affluent side of the city, and it's a very middle class, working class, lower class side of the city. I was on the affluent side of the city. That also brought those feelings of like, darn it, like 10 minutes down the street is completely different. So I say all this to say I was noticing a trend, and that trend of economic disparity is something that I knew I couldn't fix from the classroom. And that's what drove me nuts, because I'm like, I can only do so much. Like, my role as a teacher can only go so far. I can't be on a board as a teacher, which is stupid. I can't be on a table. I can't even be on a panel. Half the time they will talk about education and they won't even allow the teachers who teach the kids to be on the panel. So that drove me nuts. And at that point I realized that in order to all this equity work, all this meaningful work, all this social justice work that I came into the field wanting to do is going to go down the drain if I get caught up in the role of the classroom teacher, which the classroom teacher is great if that is what you are, that is what your passion is. But my passion, classroom teaching is something I was just good at because I love my I love my students to death, to life. So classroom teaching was good for me because of that love for them. But it wasn't my calling, it wasn't my purpose. Getting resources for them, yeah, that's my purpose. Being on a board where I can make decisions that will benefit those kids, yeah, that's my purpose. Having the funds to donate to the schools that I have taught at so they can actually have stuff, yeah, that's my purpose. You know what I mean? So like all these things that I wanted to do, I knew didn't align with being a classroom teacher anymore. And that's why I tell people that I grew out of teaching. And it's very possible to do that because you'll realize your why is changing because you're getting caught up in all the politics of teaching instead of staying focused on the why and having the time to do so. So that leads me into my first reason for leaving: work-life balance. There is none. And for any teacher that says there is, they're neglecting some type of work in that role, or they're just extremely exceptional and extremely lucky, because for me, work-life balance was not a thing. And it's crazy because in this industry of classroom teaching, we deal with a lot of toxic positivity where they say, take care of yourself, self-care, but you got to do all this other crap. By the way, so, we want you to care for yourself, but, all this other stuff, you got to figure out how to fit that into. So more than likely, you aren't going to take the time to do self-care because you have to get this stuff done too. So work-life balance for me was no longer there. My value for work-life balance changed when I became a mom because I realized I was giving so much time. Sorry, you guys. I was giving so much time to my students that I had 2 hours with my baby. And that's it. 2 hours before he went to sleep, and that's it. And that's not including work on the weekends, because we know what teacher doesn't have to work on the weekends, especially elementary school teachers. And I hate to say it like it's different, but it is, because all the stuff you have to do regarding the elementary school setting, the bulletin boards, all the stuff that makes the teaching fun, and keep in mind, I taught kindergarten and first grade. It takes a lot. So I can't compare myself to a middle school teacher, a high school teacher, a college professor. Even a specials teacher is completely different being a homeroom, kindergarten, or first grade teacher. Period. Okay, second reason, I grew. I got, when I started teaching, I was single. And I was ready for change. I was desperate for change. Keep in mind, teaching wasn't my first career. After I graduated from college, I was a flight attendant, an international flight attendant. I went to grad school, did a little corporate America work. Always have done fashion stuff because that's one of my, greatest passions. So when I enter into teaching, I was desperate for change. I hated living in the state I was living in. I was desperate to get out because I had received so much rejection of trying to enter into, so keep in mind, I got my master's in higher education, not education. So I wanted to be the Greek life, student life coordinator type person. And it just was not happening for me. I don't know. Either I was overqualified or underqualified. So I had a vengeance. I was like, F this state, F the industry, F, let me give me something different. So I went over there as someone desperate for change and someone who had nothing to lose. I didn't have a family. I was still young, I'm still young now, but I was still young. And it was just why not? I can devote all my heart and soul to this, So that's what led me to devote my heart and soul. There was no work-life balance for me. My work was my life and my life was my work. That And for some people, they're okay with that. But as soon as I had a family, that's not sustainable and that's not healthy. And the type of person I am now that has grown into mental wellness, that you should never embody your work into your entire identity as a person. That is dangerous. What if you lose that job? You'll be left with nothing. Don't ever do that.